Good morning. So, I wanted to start today in talking about going from crisis to thriving, but I want to start with the story first. And so, this was about 2.5 months ago. Most of you know, if not, I'm going to let you know that we're still in the throes of all of this with our son, and so we're doing this in real time in terms of what's happening in our lives and the lives of our family and friends and our son and so on and so forth. So this was about 2.5 months ago, and our son sent us a text to let us know what had been happening for really about 5 months. He had been in relapse, and what his message to us was that he had been smoking fentanyl. And I just remember reading the text and, the warning signs start to go off in my head and my body, and I am starting to, get the panic because most of you know that fentanyl is 100 times more potent than anything else on the street. It is quite deadly, and so it just takes it to another completely different level when you find this out. And so that information came in, I talked to my wife about it, and then what we do is I went to the mountains to go for a hike to get myself recentered again and calmer and in a better space so that I could map out the next strategies for myself. And Patty went to work in the yard. So, and then we came back together to talk about how to move forward. That was a moment that I would clearly define as crisis. And what I would say is that's what I want to talk about today is this whole notion of moving from crisis to struggling to surviving to thriving. And it has been an intention on my part, and it is one of the founding tenements of Voices in Courage to be able to help people transform out of crisis and move towards thriving in the midst of dealing with their loved one's addiction. So I want to share a little graph with you right now, or a little, oh boy. Let's see. It's not letting me. Huh. Okay. I guess I'm not going to. So I have a document that will be loaded up with the notes from this training today. But it's a graph, and it shows crisis, in crisis, it shows struggling, it shows surviving, and it shows thriving. And so, one of the first things that happened for me was I stepped back into having a difficult time sleeping. And so, again, going back to the strategies that I know that work for me, if I'm having a difficult time sleeping, I am aware of the thoughts that are going through my head, and I check them. And I've started reading Byron Katie's work now, Loving What Is. And so the 4 questions that she asks are, is that true? And so the question that's going through my mind is, could this be the thing that kills him? And so the question is that true? And yes, it is true. And is that absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt true? Yes, it is absolutely true that fentanyl could kill Sam. And then the next question is, who am I with that thought? And it really pauses me in thinking about my thoughts. And we're the only species on the planet that can do that. So I thought about my thought, and I thought, okay, who am I when I'm thinking this? I'm anxious. I am sad. I am heartbroken. I am unable to sleep. I am completely preoccupied with the thought of him dying. There's this consistent, persistent fear, panic, anxiety running behind the scenes, and sometimes right in front of me. And so there's a restlessness, there's a disturbed sleep. There's just, again, it's a shattered heart. The 4th question is, who would I be without that thought? And that's such a powerful question for me. So I really dug in and leaned into that, and I was like, okay, so without that thought, who would I be? I would be hopeful. I would be joyful. I would be continuing to deliver the message to him that he is loved no matter what. I would show up for him in the ways that I can that continue to deliver that message. That no matter what's going on, no matter what he's doing, he is always loved despite it all. And I would be calmer. I would be centered. I would be more focused. I would be able to continue to do the things in my life that I love to do the most, which is I have a great wife, I have great friends, I have a great business as a consultant, and I love my work with Voices and Courage and what we're creating here. And so that question allowed me to shift into what I can do in the world and who I am in the world in a way that is much more powerful for me. And it continues to inform and influence the importance of where our focus goes. And so I chose to, from a very intentional place, focus on being calm and centered and thriving and showing up with joy and laughter and curiosity and wonder and excellence in all that I do in my life. And that's what I would say today is, the first step in moving from crisis to struggling to surviving and then the aspiration of thriving is just awareness. Where are you in the spectrum of these things? What's going on for you when you get that phone call from your child and they're asking for money? What happens internally for you? Are you aware of what's happening in your body? And then are you aware of the thoughts that are going through your mind? Are you aware of your breathing? And awareness is the first step towards being able to be choiceful about shifting from an intentional place. And I am working and have worked on for years perfecting that skill set. And that's one of the great things about this, again, is that this is just a skill set to perfect so that you can continue to thrive and live the best version of who you are despite all the chaos and the desperation and the drama and those moments when you get a text saying 5 or 6 months of relapse has been smoking fentanyl. So it's intentional focus, and it is moving toward something instead of away from something. It's extraordinarily valuable that we focus on where we want to be and moving towards light and bright and joy and wonder and curiosity and laughter and all of these things so that we can serve at a higher level. And that's, one of my major drives. So I have become a student of thriving and identified role models of people who exemplify that for me. Because when you can identify a role model that exemplifies who you want to be in the world and how they're navigating it, it just makes it happen faster because it gives you hope that this can be done. And in the beginning, I was just kind of trying to cobble this together and figure it out myself. Excuse me. And as I began to do more research and learn more and find other people who have been in this space, I began to find people who set an intention and were focused on thriving and were not going to allow their loved one's disease to pull them into the dark hole of the disease. They were not going to allow the disease to hijack them, just like the disease has hijacked their loved one. And so with that intention and modeling others that live in that space, and then finding out from people who have dealt with addiction and are in recovery at this point, what's happening in their brain and how that works. And so again, I go back to the 5 acts of courage over and over and over again. And the 5th one is vigilant learning and community. And so I began to create my community in a way that would support me in who I chose to be in the midst of this disease. And so I think about the people that I read some of the blogs that are on Facebook, and they talk about really being in the disease with their child or their husband or their spouse. And they're just as diseased as their addict or their alcoholic. It has overtaken them. They have been hijacked too. And they think that that is the only way to do it. And so when I read those, I think, okay, I've made a very different decision. And those of us that are in this community are working on making a very different decision and figuring out how to incorporate some of the things that we talk about and are learning into our lives in a way that works for us. Because it's all an unfolding process for each one of us. My son's disease, in terms of its severity, has been over the last 4.5, 5 years. And it's been a progression. It's been an unfolding. And I have worked and worked and worked and continued to work to a point where when I got that message, I knew what I was going to do. I knew I was going to go to the mountains. Patty knew she was going to go to the yard and work in the dirt. And we knew that we would come back together and talk about it. And I knew that I would reach out to one of my spiritual coaches and have a conversation with her. I knew I was going to pull a different book off the bookshelf to read and get new ways of thinking about this into my thinking. And as it turned out, I chose immediately to I picked off the bookshelf Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth and devoured it again for the third time. And, every time I read a book for the third, fourth, or fifth time, it goes in differently because I'm not the same person, and neither are you. So whatever books work for you, revisit them from a new space. The saying is that you can't put your foot in the river in the same place ever again. You can't put it in the river twice in the same place. And that's where we are in this journey, is every step along the way, if we're progressing and I'm choosing to progress, I'm never the same person. I am continuing to perfect my skill sets and my thinking and my tribe. I'm adding new people to the community that continue to support me in living this life that I've chosen to create for myself. And all of us who are dealing with somebody that we love that's maybe in the throes of addiction right now. It's a daily thing. I was reading this morning, you just check their social media just to see if they're alive that morning. And I certainly remember being in that space where I would be checking on Messenger to see if he had been on. And then that gave me relief, because then I knew, okay, he's alive, and now I can breathe. And so I still check the social media. The difference is now Sam is 47 days clean, and he's gone through the methadone and tapering off fentanyl, and thank goodness, and then tapering off meth and doing the jump. And this has now been 47 days. So we're in a different season in this disease right now, which is the recovery disease for probably the fifth or sixth time. And every new recovery season is a different recovery season than the last recovery season. So I continue to want to lean into and be intentional about leaning into getting better and better and better at the skill sets that I'm perfecting, which really has to do with being very aware. In the thriving space for me is, I got this. I'm aware of my thoughts. I'm aware of the energy in my body. I'm aware of where I am spiritually. I am doing the things to take care of myself. And I have a morning routine. I have an evening routine. I'm getting great sleep. I am doing great work in the world. I am focused. I'm able to take feedback. I ask for feedback from people that I trust. And know that they won't blow smoke up my you-know-where. They will tell me the truth about what their perception is of, am I right? Am I centered? Am I handling this the way that it feels internally to me? And that perspective is so valuable to have somebody that you trust and is on this journey and knows what it is that you are trying to perfect, and they can give you that feedback and let you know when you think you're on and you're doing really well and there's a not quite, and they're able to give you that little bit of feedback to get me recentered again. So I really, really, really value my tribe and the inner circle that I've created that gives me true, honest, raw, real perspective on where I am and how I'm doing. And that's what I would say about this community. You know, within this community, I have a community of people that, wow, they're just so powerful in showing up for me, and that matters in so many ways. I'm so grateful and so appreciative for the people in this community that continue to show up for me and support me, hold the space for me, listen to me, let me talk about what's going on, and then ask questions so I can think anew in how I am showing up and how I want to approach this. And questions are super valuable. That's, that fourth act of courage is being open to having people ask questions and then really sitting with and thinking about the questions that they're asking and figuring out, is that a question that serves me, or how do I work with that question? Is it a question that I want to work with? And it's always up to us. We are always at choice. So I'm encouraging each one of you that is listening to this coaching call right now is, first is perfect your awareness skills. How are you feeling internally when something shows up? What are the thoughts that are going through your head that need to be interrupted and questioned? And that was another book that I picked up too. Once I finished A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, then I picked up another book by Tom Brown Jr. Called Awakening Spirits. Love his work. And it's native, indigenous based. Excuse me. So that was super powerful. I took 4 or 5 days off at the end of March and went to the coast with my wife. And literally, we have a view of the ocean. So I could just sit there and watch the waves. I could just be. And I could sleep, and I could read, I could eat great food, and I could walk the beach. And that was the 4 days of taking care of myself in the midst of what was happening. And that was so, so helpful. So I encourage people strongly to plot out and schedule those times away that are so critically important in terms of our self-care in the midst of dealing with this disease. Because if you don't put it on your calendar, it generally doesn't happen. So I have a big calendar of all 12 months in my office, my other office at home. And we plot out when we're going to be gone, when I'm going to go backpacking, whether it's just for a weekend or whether it's for 3 weeks. We plot out when we're going to go to the coast and just veg and do the things to take care of ourselves. Or just a 3-day weekend. I mean, Memorial Day weekend's coming up. I'm taking that Friday off along with that Monday. So I'll have 4 solid days to, again, restore, regenerate, recharge in a way that serves my work in the world and is critically important for me to do as an introvert. So become a student of thriving. Figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Set your intention to focus on who you want to be in terms of thriving. What does thriving mean to you? Who do you know that has perfected the skill sets of thriving in the midst of trauma, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of these crises that are showing up. There are a lot of people right now, certainly coming out of COVID, that have perfected some skills and upped their game. And so learn from them. What are they doing? Pick the things that resonate with you the most and pull them forward and put them down on paper and commit to making that happen for yourself. Sleep, really, really important. Really, really important. And that's part of thriving. Exercise, meditation, those three are the cornerstones of your thriving and will allow you to get back to center and back to a foundation of more peace and calm. So, first step, awareness. Second step, become a student of thriving. Third step, make sure you have clarity around what thriving looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And like I said, once this is reloaded up on Mighty Networks, our membership site, the attachment document will be there for you to look at. And you can see and figure out, where am I in the midst of crisis, struggling, surviving, thriving? And then you'll have a blueprint to look at. This is what thriving looks like. And this is who I choose to be. This is the skill sets that I choose to perfect in order to live a happy, healthy, vibrant, vital, joyful life in the midst of the chaos of this disease. Find the role model or role models for yourself. Learn from them, study them. For me personally, there are certain people that I have on podcast. Lisa Nichols, Amy Porterfield, she's in the marketing space. Tony Robbins, Brendon Burchard, they're on my podcast list. And when I see that they have an episode, Oprah's Super Soul, when they have an episode that resonates with me, I sometimes will listen to it over and over and over and over again, because I want to embed it in the way that I'm thinking about things. I want to adopt that way of thinking, like the thought that when life feels like it's absolutely falling apart, that it really is truly falling together. I wanted to embed that when what you would consider a crisis shows up, like my son's smoking fentanyl, I would go, and then I would rise. And that is a skill set of resilience. And so I talked about A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I talked about Awakening Spirits by Tom Brown Jr. And I talked about Byron Katie's Loving What Is. Those three books, and listening to Byron Katie and listening to other people, keeps me and my thoughts and the habits of this kind of mindset in place and continues to fuel me. So it's super important to be paying attention to who you're listening to, what you're reading. I don't hardly listen or look at any news anymore. I'll see headlines every once in a while. Somebody will tell me if something's going on, but I am not in that space because it's too depressing for me. And so, what are the things that work for you to be able to keep you lighter, brighter, and in the game of life in a way that is joy-filled and happy? And watching comedies. We just watched somebody last night, Sarah Milligan, and that was so great. An hour and a half of laughing, and then I went to bed and did some reading and did my mantras and my gratitude round and fell asleep and had a great night's sleep. So I just give you all these things to think about and hope that something in this conversation today has resonated with you. Again, like I said, set your intention, be aware, pay attention to all of the areas of your life and the skill sets that you have and the skill sets to perfect, and be focused and intentional. and be who you want to be in the midst of this. Do it your way, in a way that supports your life force energy, so that you can bring to the world what you're meant to bring to the world. So, hope this has been helpful for you today. I look forward to next month with you, and thanks for joining me, and see you next month. All right, take care, everybody.